Revenge with Karen. The moment Bryce Kendall swaggered into the Monday all-hands meeting wearing his smug little smirk and swinging a laser pointer like a damn lightsaber, I knew this company was about to get a colonoscopy from a man who'd never built a damn thing in his life. "Welcome to the new era of Ingenex," he bellowed, like we were in a dystopian pep rally. "We're trimming fat, optimizing workflows, and leaning into scalable disruption." By fat, he meant people, legacy employees, institutional memory, the folks who, actually knew what the hell our products did. And by disruption, he meant burning the engine down mid-flight and hoping the plane turns into a drone. I just sipped my lukewarm gas station coffee and watched him like I was inspecting a scratch on a rental car. No rage, no fear, just that bone-deep sigh you get when you already know how the movie ends. This wasn't my first dance with some VC plaything in a tailored button-up trying to clean house. But Bryce, he didn't smell like change. He smelled like liability and Axe body spray. Oh, and by the way, if you've made it this far and you're one of the 97% of people who listen to stories like mine without smashing that subscribe button or throwing us a like, maybe consider it. It helps more than Bryce thinks his MBA helps anything. Seriously, keeps this crew caffeinated and petty enough to keep digging up tales like this. Anyway, back to the bonfire. Bryce didn't look at me when he said, "All legacy patents and R&D archives are now under review for ownership optimization." Just said it like it was nothing. Like we were just gonna pretend the last 14 years of my midnight garage builds were a rounding error in his acquisition spreadsheet. I didn't flinch. I smiled. Kind of smile you give when the idiot raccoon finally sticks its head in the trap you set 3 weeks ago. Because what Bryce didn't know, and what legal clearly hadn't bothered to read, was buried in the brittle pages of my original 2010 offer letter, sitting in a dusty blue folder tucked behind a jar of expired Altoids in my home file cabinet. Paragraph 7. 7 lines. Long. It said, in beautifully dry corporate legalese, that any inventions developed outside company hours, off-site, with personal resources, remained the sole property of the employee. It was a standard carve-out clause back when the company still gave a damn about engineers' garage projects. Nobody had updated that offer letter template in over a decade, and I'd never asked them to. Because see, while Bryce and his PowerPoint prophets worshipped quarterly returns, I was welding prototypes in my garage at 2 a.m., documenting every line of firmware I wrote on a journaling app that timestamped each keystroke. I had footage, logs, notebooks. Hell, I even had receipts for the damn solder. So while Bryce strutted through the building like he was Moses parting the IT department, I quietly took stock. I emptied my backup server. I cleared my garage whiteboard. Every patent I'd filed, every system module, every biometric tweak, I cross-referenced them against that clause like I was prepping a murder trial. And the wild part? Nobody noticed. Not legal, not HR, not Bryce's army of product managers with motivational quotes in their Slack bios. They were too busy sunsetting roles, mine included. I started getting signals the axe was coming on Thursday, when 2 of my engineers got reorged into a marketing division that didn't even exist 3 months ago. Came the calendar holds, little 15-minute death meetings that ping onto your schedule like landmines. When mine landed, I didn't panic. I just texted Grace, my lawyer. She's 5'1", allergic to small talk, and once made a crypto CEO cry during a deposition by reading his own tweets back to him. "Time to dust off the archives," I wrote her. She replied with a thumbs up and one word, coffee, because Grace already knew what paragraph 7 meant. Reviewed it together twice. She helped me start the LLC. She helped me structure the IP firewall. And when I'd told her Bryce gave me the heebie-jeebies before I'd even shaken his hand, she told me to keep everything airtight. And I had, so the clock was ticking. Bryce was cleaning house. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the broom he was swinging was about to smack him square in the face. And me, I was just getting started. Called it a strategic reorganization, which is corporate for we fed your job to a spreadsheet and it died. By Tuesday morning, the entire embedded systems team, 12 brilliant engineers and one guy who still used a BlackBerry, was gone. Just like that. No goodbyes, no transition plan, not even a damn box of donuts in the break room. Bryce stood in the atrium after the layoffs like he was hosting a game show. "This is the hard work of evolution," he said, smiling like a man who's never built anything harder than a Tinder bio. "Sometimes you have to amputate to survive. My phone buzzed before the last engineer had even made it out of the parking lot. Subject: urgent meeting with CEO, no body text. Just a time, 3:15 p.m. No context, no HR rep CC'd. No one to escort me. I didn't need a damn psychic hotline to know what was coming. I walked into Bryce's office with the same expression I use when I'm cleaning burnt cheese out of the toaster oven. The man was lounging in his Herman Miller chair like he'd just finished ruining a startup and was looking for dessert. He gestured to the seat across from him like we were about to talk golf handicaps. "Dana, thanks for coming in. I'll keep it short. Your role, Director of Product R&D, is being sunset," he said, like I was a goddamn app update. I tilted my head. "Sunset, not eliminated," he smiled. "We're restructuring the product roadmap, vertical alignment. We need leaner teams, more agile mindshare." I swear to God, if he said synergy, I was going to stab my own thigh with a coffee stirrer. He slid a stapled packet across the desk. Severance paperwork, pre-filled. They'd already written the obit. But then I saw it, buried on page 2, under Section D. Employee agrees to full transfer of intellectual property rights, including but not limited to pending or future filings developed during or adjacent to tenure. Adjacent to tenure. I've read hundreds of contracts. I've co-written some. That phrase, that's not standard boilerplate. That's weasel speak. That's someone trying to catch the IP that slipped through the cracks, my IP. The stuff I'd spent years walling off in time-stamped logs, built after midnight on my own tools, coded on machines Ingenex never paid for. I looked up and said nothing. Just gave him the nod. The "thank you for your time, you dumb bastard" nod. Bryce smiled like he'd just euthanized a sick pet and expected applause. "Of course," he said, "if you want a sign now, we can expedite the package. No need to drag it out." "No need," I said, taking the papers like I was folding a cocktail napkin. "I'll give it a read tonight," nodded like a man who thought he'd already won. As I turned to leave, he added, "No hard feelings, Dana. You've been part of the story. We just need new characters now." I didn't even stop walking. "Just threw back, don't worry, I'm still writing." I got home, kicked off my shoes, and didn't cry, scream, or break things. I poured myself one finger of scotch and sat on the floor next to my file cabinet. It was all still there, old school paper. Fading ink. 2010 offer letter. Paragraph 7. The clause they never updated, the clause they never understood. I took a photo of it, sent it to Grace, and added 3 words, "It's go time." She responded 45 seconds later, "Time to dust off the archives." I powered up my external server, opened my encryption logs, and typed in a password I hadn't used since the Obama administration. A soft chime. The screen lit up with every build, journal, firmware update, patent draft I'd ever created under the stars, in my garage, alone. Bryce thought he'd fired a middle manager. What he'd actually done was pick a legal fistfight with the architect of his company's core tech stack. And I don't lose fistfights. They booked me into a beige conference room with flickering fluorescent lights and a sad fern that looked like it wanted to file for its own severance. HR sent Lisa, kind of person who talks to you like you're a nervous substitute teacher, and she's the real adult in the room. She smiled like she practiced it in the mirror every morning. "Hi, Dana. I know this isn't easy. Let's just get through it together, okay?" She slid a glossy folder across the table with the Ingenex logo embossed in silver foil like I was being handed a graduation certificate from hell. Inside, termination checklist, Cobra Health Plan info, discount code for some career counseling site I wouldn't touch with Bryce's login credentials, and a signature block with one bolded phrase above it. Full release of all claims and assignment of past, present, and future intellectual property. They'd even highlighted it. I let the silence stretch just a second too long. Then I gave her a sheepish little laugh. The kind a deer makes before stepping into traffic. "Oh wow," I said, "this is a lot. I wasn't expecting all this IP language." "Is that new?" Lisa blinked. She was expecting tears, maybe a choked-up thank you for the opportunity. What she got was calm curiosity. "Oh no," she chirped, flipping to the signature page. "It's standard. Just housekeeping, you know, legal lingo. It's best to sign today if you want to avoid delays with severance disbursement." "I'll need to have my lawyer take a look," I said, tilting my head like I was scared of my own boldness. Hesitated? "Of course," she said, the smile freezing ever so slightly. "But it's a pretty straightforward doc. That's what always worries me," I replied sweetly. Bryce poked his smug little head in halfway through, didn't sit, just leaned on the doorframe with that same frat boy at a boardroom glass wall energy. "Hey Dana," he said, Everything good, I nodded. Just reviewing the documents. Lisa's been super helpful. He chuckled like we were old co-workers catching up at a bar. No hard feelings, right? Just business. But the sooner we sign, the smoother the exit. Let's not get the lawyers too excited. I smiled like a woman who was absolutely going to get the lawyers excited. Totally, I said. I just don't want to miss anything. You know how these things are. He lingered like he wanted to say more. Maybe he expected me to beg. Maybe he thought I'd try to salvage my reputation with the company. Instead, just returned to the packet and gave him the same attention I'd give a smudge on a window. After he left, Lisa gave me a forced smile and said, "We'll follow up tomorrow, then?" "Sure," I said, standing. "I just need one night to breathe." But what I needed was already waiting in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet at home. Locked, double-latched, hidden beneath a stack of old operating manuals and a broken external mouse. I turned the key, and there it was, manila folder labeled Independent Builds Personal in Sharpie. Inside, signed invention logs, dated screenshots of firmware versions, scans of handwritten diagrams, some done on napkins, others on the backs of grocery receipts. I'd written notes in the margins like a woman confessing to the walls. 2:44 a.m. breakthrough on subroutine stability. Will need to validate cooling efficiency. I reached deeper and pulled out the USB drive. It was a cheap thing, dented, no label, except for one line of embossed white label tape I'd slapped on it 5 years ago, Midnight Builds. Every prototype, every compiled version of the code Bryce thought he owned was in there. I'd encrypted it, backed it up twice, stored hashes in 3 different cloud drives under separate LLC names, all dated, timestamped, and digitally notarized. I ran my thumb over the label and exhaled slowly. There was no panic, no noise, just a stillness so sharp it could cut through corporate buzzwords like a scalpel. Let them think I was hesitating. Let them believe I was dazed, confused, scared of the job market at 48. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. They thought I'd built their empire, but I'd only ever been renting them the scaffolding. Grace didn't say a word for the first 10 minutes, just flipped through my original offer letter like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls, and she was looking for buried gold. She sat cross-legged on her office couch, glasses slipping halfway down her nose, a pencil between her teeth, and a half-drained mug of black coffee perched on the edge of a legal pad. I sat across from her in a chair that was too soft, staring at the same words I'd read 1,000 times, but never needed until now. Paragraph 7, nestled right there between the confidentiality clause and the non-compete. A quiet, unimpressive line with a 2010 date stamp and no amendments. The employee shall retain sole ownership of any inventions or intellectual property developed outside of company hours, without use of company equipment or proprietary resources, and without direct assignment or direction from the company. That was it. No fancy formatting, no footnotes, no corporate camouflage, just a sentence that every HR department since 2012 had stopped bothering to revise, because no one ever reads offer letters once you're in the system. Except me. And now Grace. She finally spoke, tapping the paper twice. "This is beautiful," she murmured. Understated, I agreed. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming behind the smudged lenses. "Do they know about this?" I shook my head. If legal ever reviewed it, they didn't clock it. Been sending out standard severance with blanket IP transfer language, trying to backdoor ownership after the fact. Grace chuckled dryly. Typical. Bet they're relying on volume and panic. Fire fast, scoop up the gold while everyone's still in shock. I pulled the USB out of my coat pocket and set it on the table between us. This is everything they're going to wish they had, and everything they thought I gave them for free. Grace raised an eyebrow. Encrypted. Triple. Data's intact. Timestamped, notarized, mirrored on 3 private repositories. One in Iceland, just for fun. Her smirk twitched. Iceland, always with the flair. "I like cold weather and loopholes," I said. She took out a clean sheet of paper and started sketching out the plan. "Will acknowledge receipt of the severance documents. Express intent to review. Then we'll counter with a conditional IP ownership objection based on paragraph 7. We won't yell. Whisper." Whispering terrifies them. I nodded. "Can you prep the language tonight? I'll have it to you in 2 hours. She paused. "You know they might try to rescind the severance once they realize what's at stake." "I'm counting on it," I said. "It'll show intent to coerce. Strengthens our case." Grace glanced back at paragraph 7, then closed the folder and tapped it once like she was sealing a casket. "It's right there," she said. "Not buried. not even disguised. Just didn't bother to read. Bryce thinks he's clever, I said, but he's loud. Loud people forget about the quiet details. She stood and walked to her filing cabinet, pulling out a stack of boilerplate clauses they'd used to challenge my claim. They'll push back, she warned. They'll try to argue that the work was tangentially related. That proximity equals ownership. That's why I never built in the office, I said. Never used company machines, never synced to my Ingenex email. Hell, the power bill on my garage is in a separate LLC's name. Grace paused, then gave a small, approving nod. You were planning for this. I wasn't planning for Bryce, I said. I was planning for anyone. She scribbled a note on the pad and handed it to me. Here's the language for your reply email to HR. Keep it polite. Keep it vague. No threats. Just calm acknowledgement and a request for review time. I scanned it quickly. No fireworks. No declarations. Just pressure. Elegant legal pressure. As I stood to leave, she added one last thing. Dana, yeah. When we slide this across the table, don't blink. The power's already yours. All we're doing is letting them see it. I walked out of her office into the cold evening air, the folder under one arm, the USB back in my coat, and a heat building in my chest that wasn't rage or fear or vengeance. It was satisfaction. Not because I'd won yet, but because I'd finally reached the part of the story where they realize I wasn't bluffing. Not then, not now, not ever. The conference room was colder than usual. Not temperature-wise, psychologically, corporate frostbite. The kind that sets in when the people across the table already think they've won and are just waiting for your signature to seal your fate in a Ziploc bag labeled former employee. Bryce was seated at the head, dressed like an off-brand Bond villain, too tight blazer, expensive watch he probably couldn't read without a backlight, and a folder in front of him that I'm sure he believed contained my future. Next to him sat Lisa from HR, still trying to make soothing eye contact like she was the emotional support goat in a horror film. And across from me, calm as an assassin in pearls, was Grace. She was unbothered. She'd brought her own pen, own printed copy of my offer letter, and a thermos of black coffee that steamed like it had something to say. Bryce cleared his throat and leaned forward like a man who'd rehearsed his lines in the mirror that morning. Dana, he began, faux earnest, we're formally concluding your employment today, effective immediately. He glanced down at his folder, flipped it open, and pulled out a fresh stack of legalese with a flourish. Now, obviously, your work here has been substantial. Appreciate your service, and as part of this separation, we're ensuring a generous severance. In return, the company will require you to sign the standard IP release documents. Just formality, protects our interests moving forward. He smiled like he expected applause. I didn't blink. I didn't reach for the paper. I didn't even twitch. Instead, I folded my hands neatly on the table, looked at Grace, and said, would you? She nodded once and reached into her bag, producing a clean manila folder with a single stapled document inside. The paper was crisp. The top of it read, Intellectual Property Rights Employee Claim Exemption Notice. Grace slid it across the table without a word, positioning it directly in front of Bryce. He looked at it, then back at me, then back at it. Lisa shifted in her chair. Bryce frowned, his bravado dimming just slightly. What's this? Grace spoke evenly. Reminder that Dana Hart's original employment agreement includes a carve-out clause for independently developed intellectual property. Paragraph 7. Bryce's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Paragraph 7, Grace repeated, unfazed. Signed in 2010. Never amended. Still binding. It states that any IP developed off-hours, off-site with no use of company resources belongs solely to the employee. He opened his mouth, but Grace cut him off, calm, precise. Surgical, we've included documentation of compliance. Time logs, device logs, third-party verification, and notarized development journals. We've also listed all builds submitted under Dana's name that meet the carve-out criteria. Lisa leaned in, whispering. Bryce didn't move. I watched the moment his brain finally stumbled into the bear trap. He thought I was here to sign paperwork. That I'd whimper, sniffle, ask for a reference letter. Maybe beg to stay on as a consultant. He didn't come prepared for legal jiu-jitsu. He came prepared for an obituary. Grace wasn't finished. We're also notifying you formally that any attempt to use, license, or modify the intellectual property in question without a renegotiated agreement will result in a cease and desist. Retroactively enforced. Bryce blinked. Twice. His lips parted like he wanted to say something sharp, but all that came out was, that clause can't hold, it's too broad. It's not, Grace said. It's precise and legally tested. Would you like us to review the case law? Lisa's eyes darted to the copy of my offer letter, already open to the right page. She looked pale. I leaned back slightly, just enough to make the chair creak. Bryce, I said softly, I know it's disappointing. You thought you were buying the blueprints, but you were just leasing the walls. He shoved back from the table and stood, pretending to look busy rifling through his folder. Grace and I didn't move. We'll need to review this, he muttered, with counsel. Of course, Grace said, cool as ice cream in a power outage. We'll wait for your response in writing. Please ensure all product deployment and licensing tied to Miss Hart's builds is suspended until this is resolved. Bryce didn't respond. Just marched out of the room like someone had pulled his spine out through his ego. Lisa collected the unsigned severance forms with trembling hands. As Grace gathered her things, I stood, slid my chair back under the table, and straightened my blazer. For the first time in that entire sterile building, I felt warm, not because I'd humiliated him, because he'd humiliated himself. All I did was read what was there the whole damn time. They didn't even wait until the end of the day. By 4:17 p.m., Bryce had summoned legal into what I assume was a panic-soaked PowerPoint séance. I imagined the whiteboard filled with acronyms, arrows pointing nowhere, and one big question in red Sharpie. Can she do that? Spoiler alert, yes, I could, and I had. The next morning, Lisa from HR sent a clarification request that was basically a veiled plea disguised as policy language. It read like it had been drafted by 3 interns on speakerphone with ChatGPT. Grace forwarded it to me with a one-word subject line, sloppy. I didn't reply. Grace did, with a PDF copy of my IP documentation index, organized by creation date, device serial number, GPS location, and hash verification. No commentary, just cold data, like tossing a frozen salmon on the negotiation table and daring them to say it's not fish. Then came the calls. First up was Evan, one of the engineers I'd mentored back when he still thought version control was just saving your file twice. He sounded hesitant, too polite. Hey Dana, he said, drawn out, casual. I was just wondering, totally random, do you remember when we first started working on the biometric sync protocol? I can't seem to find the original prototype logs. Might want to check the metadata on the initial filings, I said, voice flat. Beat of silence. Oh, okay, well, just trying to double-check some timelines. I'd do that, I said, and hung up. Then Clara called. She never calls. She's allergic to conflict and once got hives from a poorly worded Slack message. Dana, she said, sounding like someone was behind her mouthing instructions. Do you recall whether the firmware build from Q2 last year was finalized internally, or if maybe some of the work happened externally? Let the silence hang until it was uncomfortable enough to hurt. Clara, I said, check the metadata. Click. Third was Jules, Smart, Slippery, and Bryce's unofficial shadow. The kind of guy who took credit for things he didn't understand and thought calling people rock stars was the same as managing them. Hey, superstar, he began. Don't, I interrupted. He laughed like we were old friends sharing a joke over beer instead of staring down the barrel of a legal nuke. Okay, look, just between us. If someone were to hypothetically reconfigure the current IP filings to retroactively include team contributions, would that? I didn't even let him finish. Check, the metadata. He sighed like I was being unreasonable. Come on, Dana. You're not really going to freeze the whole product line over a clause no one's enforced since Obama, are you? I'm not freezing anything, I said. I'm just finally owning it. Click. That afternoon, I saw the first signs of full-blown corporate panic. Engineering access was partially suspended across 3 departments. A memo leaked from legal requesting immediate review of all patent ownership assumptions predating acquisition. Internal Slack channels lit up with confused emojis and frantic speculation. I knew because someone anonymously forwarded me screenshots. In one, Bryce wrote, "We'll fight it. She's bluffing. Legal says it's flimsy." Grace read that line and didn't even smirk. He's doing the corporate version of whistling past the graveyard, she said. Bluster buys time, but it won't buy clarity or ownership. They sent a follow-up from legal the next day. Dressed it up like a negotiation attempt, but the intent was clear. Stall, intimidate, and bait me into overplaying my hand. Started with, we understand there may have been some confusion around the development origins of certain IP assets. Grace replied with, there was no confusion. Paragraph 7 is clear. Ownership is not conditional on company belief. but on actual development record. Attached are notarized logs and device histories for the disputed assets. We are open to licensing discussions. Not surrender, not aggression. Just legal chess in 4-move checkmate form. Bryce tried one more tactic. Sent me an email personally. No CC, just him. Subject: let's be adults about this. The body was exactly what you'd expect from a man watching his empire slip out from under his imported leather shoes. Dana, I think this has gotten out of hand. We both know you contributed significantly during your time here, and we'd rather not litigate over something that can be resolved with a simple understanding. Let's talk this out. Oh, lawyers? Just two professionals finding common ground. I didn't reply. Grace did. Dear Mr. Kendall, Miss Hart has always conducted herself with professionalism. She also documented everything. Our position remains unchanged. Regards, Grace Monroe. JD, that silence after is the best part, because there's nothing louder than a man realizing too late that the woman he fired didn't just have a backup plan, she was the contingency all along. By Monday, denial phase had rotted into something uglier: realization. The first crack came in the form of panicked midnight email from one of Bryce's acquisition partners, Devin Spence, the smarmiest man to ever sign a 7-figure check while wearing suede loafers without socks. He'd CC'd a dozen people, but accidentally blind copied me instead of Grace. A gift. Subject line: urgent IP status re. Hart Systems. The message: I've reviewed the filings. Told us the IP was clean. It's not. These patents are unassignable. The clause is legit. She owns them. You didn't disclose this during due diligence. If this isn't resolved, the entire agreement could be in breach. That one landed like a dirty bomb. By sunrise, word had hit the back channels. The Slack grapevine, the investor forums, the hush-hush Discord for B-tier tech angels who think NDAs are foreplay. 2 separate licensing negotiations, with multi-million-dollar deals tied to biometric integration and cloud sync modules, went from imminent to paused pending legal clarification. One pulled out completely, citing IP instability. I didn't celebrate. I just made pancakes in my kitchen, barefoot, while listening to the morning news play the Ingenex press release on loop. We remain confident in the integrity of our IP portfolio. Translation: we have no idea what's happening. Please stop emailing. Grace called mid-morning. Bryce tried arbitration. I flipped a pancake. Let me guess, he doesn't know what arbitration is. He thinks it means you yell in a room and someone picks a winner. Sounds like how he runs board meetings. She chuckled. I filed the cease and desist. Certified delivery. Timestamped. Included a 48-page appendix with documented build logs and a statement of ownership. Also sent a copy directly to their 2 largest institutional investors. I raised an eyebrow. Directly, they deserved clarity. I highlighted the part where his legal team failed to amend the original contract language. Paragraph 7, bolded, underlined, and annotated with 6 different case precedents. You're spoiling me, I said. No, she replied. I'm finishing him. The next day, I heard from a former colleague, still inside, still loyal. Held an emergency board call, she said. Investors demanded an audit of Bryce's deal history. People were shouting. One director asked him point blank why he didn't vet the legacy contracts before gutting the team. What'd he say? I asked. He blamed HR, of course he did. She lowered her voice. He doesn't look good. Like physically, pale, sweaty. Snapped at Clara in front of 3 VPs. Said you sucker punched him with a footnote. I didn't laugh, not because it wasn't funny, but because it was perfect. Across the street in my new temporary office, Hart Applied Systems, LLC, I pulled up the IP dashboard Grace had built. All green, all mine, status, owned, active, licensed only on written approval. Every day, Bryce's empire hemorrhaged a little more. Partners wanted reassurances. Clients wanted proof. The hardware still worked, but the heart of the system, my software, my encryption routines, my biometric sync, was now encased in legal Kevlar with my name stitched into the lining. They couldn't patch around it. They couldn't clone it. Every workaround they'd try would trigger yet another violation. They had built a skyscraper on soil they didn't own, and now the foundation was talking. I didn't gloat. I didn't rage tweet. I didn't leak a whisper. I just watched. Like a person in the nosebleeds of their own execution, calm, remote, insulated from the noise. Indication isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It just waits patiently in the back row while the show tears itself apart. The takedown came not with sirens, but silence. On a Thursday morning, Ingenex's flagship product, Pulse Vault, the darling of their investor decks, and the reason Bryce got that shiny CEO title, vanished from every retail platform. Pulled from shelves. E-commerce links redirected to a sterile message. Temporarily unavailable due to technical licensing review. No warning, no workaround. Just a sudden, gaping hole in their revenue stream and a torrent of pissed-off corporate clients demanding refunds. One government contractor sent a letter with language that included the phrase material breach of supplier trust. Another wanted a full refund on a $9.7 million integration deal plus interest. Eagle couldn't stall anymore. Bryce, backed into a corner with an ego the size of a data center and the leverage of a paper napkin, reached out himself. Grace forwarded me his email with a subject line that just read, "Clown face Dana, let's be adults. I'm offering a generous consulting arrangement. Quiet fix, minimal noise. You'd be compensated fairly and help us avoid the PR mess. Nobody wins in a drawn-out legal situation. Name your rate." Name my rate? I stared at that sentence long enough to feel insulted on behalf of the English language. He still thought this was about money, that I was a disgruntled engineer angling for a paycheck, that he could toss a few zeros at the problem, and I'd come limping back into the building with a smile and a signed NDA. So I sent Grace my terms, and she delivered them like a guillotine. Hart Applied Systems LLC would offer a licensing agreement for the disputed patents. Triple market value. Non-transferable. Exclusive term, 6 months with mandatory renegotiation. I retained all derivative rights, including adaptation, integration, and modification. Ingenex would be contractually forbidden from altering source code or selling licensed IP to third parties. Every deployment would require written consent from my office. And Bryce's name was to be completely removed from all patent footnotes and internal attributions, retroactively. Grace sent it as a PDF with the file name, Mutually Beneficial Reality Check PDF. The board met the next morning. 6 directors, 3 lawyers, 1 emergency financial consultant flown in from New York, who allegedly whispered the words total collapse risk on the call. Bryce tried to talk, tried to reframe. Spun words like interim compromise and reputational capital. Chairman cut him off with a sentence I'll never forget. "You lied about ownership. We're lucky she's even offering a deal." That afternoon, they removed Bryce from all public-facing communications. Internal memos labeled him on leave pending review. By Friday, he was a ghost in the system. His access revoked, his parking spot reassigned, his name scrubbed from the internal org chart like a bad line of code. Grace called with the update. "They're ready to sign," she said. "I'm not." Pause. "What do you want?" "Full control," I said. "They don't get to touch anything unless I greenlight it." "Understood." She updated the licensing language and added one more clause at my request. "Any attempt to replicate or re-engineer core modules without consent shall be treated as breach of agreement, triggering full revocation." They signed, because they had no choice. That weekend, I sat in my office overlooking the shell of the company I'd once fueled with every sleepless night and 2 a.m. breakthrough. The software they'd tried to steal now sat in a repo I controlled. Every login request, every API call, every heartbeat of their product line went through my systems. They didn't own a single breath of it without my blessing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. And now, for the first time in 14 years, the work had my name on it. My name alone. Dana Hart, owner, architect, final gatekeeper. And I still hadn't signed a damn thing they wrote. Friday morning broke clean and bright, like it knew something was ending. I walked into my new office at 8:52 a.m. 4th floor, south-facing window, directly across the street from Ingenex HQ. Their monolithic glass building loomed like a tombstone for ideas they didn't understand. I set my coffee down, turned on my monitor, watched the final domino tilt. At exactly 9:59 a.m., Grace texted, "Ready?" I responded, "Pull it." 10 o'clock a.m. sharp. Every system tied to my legacy IP froze like a glacier cracked in half. Engineers inside Ingenex scrambled as admin dashboards threw up authentication errors. Biometric logins failed. Their flagship demo suite turned into a spinning wheel of digital death. Then came the push notification. Lit up every internal device, every endpoint, every exec laptop and showroom tablet in their ecosystem. Notice, this software is now the sole property of Hart Applied Systems trademark. All functionality has been suspended pending license renewal. Please contact licensing at hartapply.com for access requests. The screenshot of that pop-up hit Twitter 47 seconds later, posted by some poor junior dev who hadn't signed a gag order yet. Investors saw it. Clients saw it. Reporters saw it. Bryce saw it. He was in a boardroom 3 floors down, still clinging to some fantasy that this would all settle quietly, that they could keep patching holes in the hull while denying the water was rising. A tech blog broke the story before lunch. Ingenex locks out of own product after IP licensing deal goes sour. Somewhere inside that glass tower, I imagine Bryce's face went the color of skim milk. That tight-jawed, and in the ears look he always got when something didn't go his way, which, up until now, hadn't happened often enough. He tried calling. Twice. Grace answered once. Licensing inquiries are now handled exclusively through Hart Applied Systems, she said, tone drier than Nevada. We'll need a written request. Standard processing time is 2 to 3 business days. Then she hung up. And I stood by the window, mug in hand, watching them squirm through polarized glass. The patents were mine. The leverage was mine. The story was mine again. I took a sip of coffee, Colombian, strong, brewed in a French press older than Bryce's entire career, and turned to Grace, who was reviewing the final notarized documents on her tablet. Remind them, I said, voice soft, satisfied, already drifting towards something like peace. Always read the fine print. She didn't reply, just nodded once. Across the street, Bryce stood at the window of the Ingenex boardroom, staring in our direction like a man watching his house burn down with the deed in someone else's name. His empire, his power, his future, it was all built on someone else's garage floor. And that someone had just changed the locks. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.